The next type of reader that will find my book interesting, I think, is generally women who came of age in the 1980s and men too, but I'll talk about men later. They'll definitely realize or recognize the cultural backdrop of my story. And also, I think younger women will resonate as well because here we are again, sort of in familiar territory. So, the 80s, I came of age in the 80s, and it was a time of great progress for women. I mean, there were record numbers of women being elected to political office. There were, the first women partners of law firms, and, some women were even sitting on boards of corporations. There was also this increased consciousness of domestic violence, which really was experienced through the Lifetime movie network, cable network, which brought those stories to life. There was finally, like, I don't even think until 1982, when all across the country, it was illegal to rape your partner, whether that was a man or a woman, actually. And the Violence Against Women Act was passed. And even though it wasn't funded, unfortunately, it was passed. So there was pressure on Congress to recognize that there was this issue. And what was interesting is that while there was that progress, there was also this like really deep backlash and that really couched itself in violent rhetoric towards women and their sense of growing independence. So I kind of, and a lot of women, I think, brush that off, but it gets absorbed in you. So another couple of things in movies, Alien. Sigourney Weaver played the first woman protagonist in a science fiction film where she kicked alien ass, just like a man could. And then, of course, there was the movie Thelma and Louise, and the reaction to that was very interesting because, not only did those women blow up a semi truck, and actually male movie reviewers, they didn't like that. But they also, at the end, chose death over oppression because they couldn't see out of the system. So anyway, there was this progress, but there was also this counter backlash, and we're circling back to that right now. In my story, I thought I was living life on my own terms and even getting married. Like my husband and I walked ourselves down the aisle as partners. And I was going to have my father give me away to my husband. And so when my marriage eventually ended, which is part of my unraveling, these old wounds actually came up to the surface and I had to deal with them. And I didn't even know that I had these wounds. So in chapter 19, which I call setting boundaries, there was a strange dynamic. Once I knew I was getting divorced, I kept being tested when it came to men. Like I would be sitting at a bar and a man would just, come closer. And it wasn't like friendly conversation. It was more like I had this feeling that he was imposing on my personal space, and I had to learn how to sort of like shut that down. And it sounds funny, but I had lived safely in the security of this marriage for 24 years. So for those people who like the Eat, Pray, Love story, either the book or the movie, you're going to like this book as well because it is kind of the same dynamic of a woman who then goes to find, her deeper self. But in my book, there's more focus on the interplay between sexuality and spirituality, where for her, that character, they were kind of separate things. For me, they're intertwined. So I think it makes for a richer story.